Now, today our talk is Humanism in Action. Just a very brief introduction. When I talk to my kids, they say, "Dad, why do I have to join anything? Why can't I just be a good person and lead a good life, as you taught me to be, without joining?" And of course, that's fine. But some of us do join for various reasons. I like being among humanists because they are like-minded people and we have interesting talks. And if you're a member of Shropshire Humanists, you have access to all these wonderful extra things. And I've joined Humanists UK because I strongly support their campaigns. And this is the main campaign, divided into 4 different sections. I'm not going to talk about these. This is a very interesting talk in itself. And they make real inroads into that. So when you join something like Humanists UK, you're saying, this is what I believe, this is what I support. You're nailing your colours to the mast, you're standing up and being counted. And if you pay a subscription, or give a one-off donation, you're making a big difference to the success of these campaigns. But today we're talking about going a step further. We're going to concentrate on 3 main areas of humanism in action. This is when you talk the talk, you walk the walk rather than talk the talk. So, firstly, in a minute, Maxine Beech is going to talk about humanist ceremonies. In fact, all 3 speakers do humanist ceremonies. Falder is going to talk about non-religious pastoral care. That's the sort of like the work of chaplains in hospitals and hospices and prisons, and colleges and the armed forces. And she has experience. And I'll be talking about school volunteering, and I'll say a bit more about that then. Now, what we want to do is to show you how important these activities are, and they make a real difference to the lives of individuals. We want to show how important they are because they raise the profile of humanism. We want to show that they're actually doable, even with a busy life, because you can choose how much you do, and when you do it, and where you do it. Some, like the volunteers, are volunteers and they don't get paid. The pastoral care volunteers are mainly volunteers, but some actually, after a period, are given part-time paid contracts by, for example, hospitals or hospices. All the celebrant work is fee-based, and for many celebrants, it's a very welcome addition to their income or their pension, or in some cases, it is their sole income. We'll show you that the skills aren't hard to achieve, as the training is really excellent. And in the case of pastoral care and school volunteering, the training is completely free. The after-training support is extremely good as well. You're not just left to flounder. You're given a mentor, there's a huge amount of support if you have problems. And I was very daunted when I trained in all 3 of these areas, but the skills I was taught in the aftercare give me and the others who have done it considerable confidence in doing it. Right. So I think I'll let Maxine take it.
Thank you for the introduction. So, my name is Maxine Beech and I am a Humanist Celebrant. That is what I do full-time. That is my full-time job now. So I thought for this talk, since we are sort of opening up debate about humanism in action, I would try and leave enough time at the end to answer any questions. So I've left my presentation quite loose. I thought I'd tell my story and give you a little insight into the things that I get up to as a humanist celebrant. And then, if you have any questions, we'll perhaps have a little bit of a discussion. I've actually, unfortunately, got to shoot off after this meeting, which drive down to Cambridge, so I won't be able to hang around for very long afterwards. So hopefully, if you have any questions, then do feel free to interrupt me if you want to. I thought I'd put this slide up to start with and introduce this as possibly the best job in the world. I am a little bit biased because this is my job and I absolutely love it. And I put job like that because in many ways it doesn't feel like a job. Celebrancy is something that you get very passionate about very, very quickly. So in many ways it doesn't feel like a job. But I actually only just got this testimonial through the other day. This was last Saturday's wedding on Anglesey with Holly and Damon, who are absolutely fabulous couple. Spent a long time with them planning their wedding ceremony. And this came through just the other day, and they said, just wanted to know how much we appreciate the thought and effort we put into everything and what that meant to us. And I think that's really important, that what we do as Humanist Celebrants is create ceremonies that are very meaningful to people. And as my dad says, lovely, there are people like you in the world who care for these things to make it their life's work, which I thought, I'm going to have to steal that one from my website, frame it and put it up on the wall, and so it's just a recent ceremony. So that kind of says everything about my job. Yes, you know, it pays the bills, but it is so much more than that. It is absolutely wonderful to get insights into the lives of the people that you end up working with. So I do all three ceremony types. The three ceremony types are Humanist wedding ceremonies, Humanist baby namings, and Humanist funerals. So I'm trained on those, but I'll reveal all shortly. A question that you might have is, why do we need more celebrants, or do we need more celebrants? Clearly I'm standing here because we do need more celebrants. And the reasons are that most people still haven't heard about us. Most people don't know that they have choice when it comes to celebrating key life events and milestones in their lives. A lot of people who come to my ceremonies will come up to me afterwards and go, that was just so different and so refreshing. I didn't know that I could do that. I didn't know that we could get married in our parents' garden. I didn't know that we could have a naming celebration that wasn't just a christening. I didn't know that I had this choice. And most people who hear about us tend to have heard about us through actually attending a ceremony. So it tends to still be quite word of mouth. So I very much believe that when we have more celebrants, more of us are available to take ceremonies. And the more ceremonies that we do, we are creating more demand, because the people that sit in our ceremonies all of a sudden realise that that's what they want. And they'll come up to me and say, you know, go and take my funeral when the time comes, or whatever it might be. So people get very excited about it. Just pinpointing on the three ceremony types. So with wedding ceremonies, the legal situation might be helpful. So as the law stands in England and Wales currently, a humanist wedding ceremony is not legally recognised. So what my couples will do is to usually go to the registrar office a couple of days before, maybe a couple of days after their humanist ceremony, and they will do what we call a statutory ceremony. It costs £45 to £50. They go in a room, they don't need to say their vows to each other, they don't need to exchange rings, they can wear what they want, they only need 2 witnesses, they just have to say a contractual and a declaratory statement, and that is it. So it is the paperwork. I say it's like when you go to the bank to change your name. It's, you know, it's a formality. And indeed it's the same case in many countries around the world. In France you still have to go to the registrar office to do the paperwork, and it's separated out. Another argument I like to put forward is that we don't tend to go and follow people when they go and sign a birth certificate or a death certificate. But we see a naming and a funeral, something quite different, so we split out the ceremonies there. So that's the current situation. They are legal in Scotland, they're very popular in Scotland, they're legal in Ireland. As of this year, Northern Ireland and Jersey, and Guernsey is going to follow, we hope, very soon. We're always hopeful that the law will change in England and Wales. In fact, we don't actually need a law change. When the Marriage Act was amended to allow gay marriage in 2013, the government, David Cameron at the time, did actually put in an order-making power, which means that any subsequent government can activate this power, say the magic words, whatever it is, and legalise humanist wedding ceremonies. And it would be, as I understand, fairly straightforward. It wouldn't need a change in law. So if this happens, or rather when this happens, it can happen quite quickly, and we're doing quite a lot of campaigning behind the scenes. We are also putting together a legal case to challenge how unfairly law is in England and Wales that people who are humanists can't have a ceremony that reflects their belief system, but other faith groups can. There's the potential for devolved marriage laws in Wales as well, and obviously we're quite close to the border. So basically, when this happens, there will probably be an explosion of demand. And I think current celebrants probably feel the same, that once this becomes legal, it will be in the news and people will hear about us a lot more. So weddings could become very popular very quickly. What we're expecting is something like, if I get my facts and figures right, after about sort of 5 or 6 years, we could be doing 25,000 weddings in London, something like that, if we're using the kind of Scottish model. So that's weddings. Naming ceremonies, I would say we need more celebrants, because a lot of people still don't know what a naming ceremony is. And again, the more celebrants, the more people going out there pushing it, and it's the kind of ceremony where I think local advertising works really well. Going to mum and baby groups, posters in cafes, things like that works brilliantly. So training more naming celebrants would be great, so that people know that they have that choice. And a naming ceremony is essentially, it's a welcome to the world, a welcome to the family, to the community. It's a great chance for people to assign perhaps special people, guide parents, mentors, things like that, to welcome a baby into the world. But isn't an initiation into a faith group, it's just a welcome. So they're really, really lovely events, and again, it's still very much word of mouth. So it's only in the last year, I think, that we've been training naming celebrants in just one ceremony type. It used to be the case that you had to be a wedding or funeral celebrant in order to take on namings, but now you can be trained in just namings if that's something that interests you. Funerals is a bit of a funny one. So we've been doing funerals for a very long time. We've been doing ceremonies for over 120 years. But there's a slight feeling that the marketplace, for want of a better word, is sort of changing with funerals. So traditionally, funeral directors have funerals wrapped up. So when somebody passes away, or you would go to your FD and they would arrange everything for you. So the funeral celebrant would then have to get in with the FD and be on their sort of recommended supplier list. And there's been a lot of independent celebrants as well who are now taking on funerals. But there's a bit of a feeling among celebrants that they're starting to get more interest in people who are doing direct funerals. So not necessarily just going straight to the funeral director, but saying, actually, again, we want some choice, we want something a bit different, we want a woodland burial, we want something else. So it is changing a little bit. So I thought I'd just outline how I came to be a celebrant. So this is where you can usually find me in a coffee shop, generally working on scripts or meeting couples. Really embarrassingly wearing the same jumper that I wear tonight. I do have other jumpers. This is clearly my celebrity jumper with my two lovebirds when I'm thinking about weddings. So I had a sort of humanist wedding 7 years ago. I say sort of humanist because I'd read about humanism and found it quite interesting, but we also had a mutual friend called Peter, who was very, very good at public speaking, and actually we asked him, because he knew us so well, to be our celebrant, but we utilised all the resources from what was then BHA, but now Humanists UK, on how to put a ceremony together. So we sort of created our own humanist ceremony, and absolutely loved the process of putting our own ceremony together and actually saying something that felt right and fitting for us in our situation. So we had that 7 years ago. I did think about weddings then. I was a teacher, I was an RE teacher for 7 years, and as part of that I was asked to create some resources on teaching humanism within the religion curriculum. And in that line I met up with a few humanist celebrants to find out quite what a humanist celebrant does. And the common theme was that they were all absolutely wonderful people, just really, really genuinely warm, lovely, friendly people who were clearly passionate about what they did. And that's really what inspired me. That was Victoria Denning, so her fault. And that's what inspired me to look into actually training. Now, at the time, I was a bit worried because I thought, I'm quite young. Do I have the gravitas? Do I have the authority? Will I get any work? Will it fit alongside teaching okay? But a few people gave me a nudge and I applied to do the training. I'm more than happy to take questions about the training, but it takes place over several months, 3 or 4 months. You have residentials, you have assignments, you get observed, you get provisionally accredited, and then you get observed actually doing a real ceremony to get your full accreditation. So I went through the training process, which was highly recommended, really, really high quality training, and thought, well, this will be a nice little project, a little hobby to do on the side of teaching. I'll maybe do a couple a year and carry on teaching. And in the first year I did 7 weddings. Bear in mind, people usually book their weddings 12, 18 months in advance. The second year I had 37 and realised that there's a big demand for humanist weddings, and I had to make a choice between doing ceremonies and doing teaching. So I thought I've served my 7 years. So I do this full time now, and this is a picture from my very first wedding with my very brightly dressed groom. So this was back in 2015, I trained in 2014, that was 2015. So humanist weddings, I thought I'd share with you just a few photos so you get a little bit of an insight into the kind of things I do. A lot of them can feel very traditional. A lot of couples will come to you very excited and say, oh, we want to have a humanist ceremony, we want something a bit different, a bit out there. And you start talking to them about their plans and how are you going to be seated, we're going to sit in rows, and we're going to have an aisle, and my dad's going to walk me down, and we're going to have a veil. And you realise that actually what they do is not necessarily they want something wacky and off the wall. Some of them do. I think my 3rd wedding was a fancy dress one, first and only. Not because it was awful, but just so happened that no one else has asked. They can be very, very different, but the common theme is that they're very, very personal, and you tell stories, and people laugh. And actually it's a really, really emotive, captivating event where family and friends, you get to see them in absolute stitches, tears of joy. You can just use the space how you want to, so it's a little bit like creating theatre. I like to put my couple side by side because then their guard drops, they're in their natural habitat, they can hold hands, they can do what they do as a couple, and they can actually look at their family and friends as well and get their reactions. And actually it's not just about a spectacle, everybody's witnessing and watching them, but actually everyone's a part of it. So they feel very, very inclusive. They can be held in any venue because they're not legal currently, so you can have them absolutely wherever you want to. This one was supposed to be in the garden. This one was supposed to be, this bride's mother spent about 9 months arranging her garden and planting things to be in flower at the right time, and the weather was like today. We had no chance of having it outside, but thankfully they had a really nice marquee. This one was outside, and the weather was great because this was Mallorca. This was mid-August this year, so you can do them abroad. It just depends where people want you to go. As I say, they can be very, very emotional, both in tears of joy and just people creasing up in stitches. And if this video works, this is actually a very old video, so the problem is I make this video for my website and then cut my hair off. So people see this video on my website, and then when I go to meet them, they've got no idea who I am. But I made this little montage of these are my 2016 weddings, so I thought I'd share it with you. than the computer wanted to take. It shouldn't be quite a jittery, but you get the idea. I think the common theme is that we just have a lot of fun, and you get to know people you work with so well because you will meet with them and they will reveal it all to you. And many of them I've stayed friends with over the years as well. Namings I will run through briefly. I've kind of reined in my naming ceremonies, so I've had a bit of a change this year. I'm still doing weddings, but I felt that taking up all of my Saturdays with weddings and Sundays with namings was a little bit unfair on my own family and my own social life. So this year I made the decision, as much as I love namings, to step back from namings, and I've trained this year to do funerals. I haven't yet started them, getting the wedding season out of the way. I haven't had the training, so in sort of end of next month I'll be looking at taking my first funerals. But again, wonderfully joyous occasions, again held in any location you want to. They might be tea rooms, they might be a family home. This was for little Teddy, he was super cute. You can involve, this isn't the parents, it's the guide parents, so it's giving other people, as I say, a special role in that child's life. And they're very relaxed affairs as well. You never quite know, you don't know what's going to happen at a naming. You've just got to be able to think on your feet sometimes. The very first naming I did, gorgeous little baby who decided to throw up 5 minutes before the end. You just have to go with it. So sometimes we just put them out on play mats, have toys around. It's not stuffy, it's not formal, they haven't got to sit somewhere. They do what they want to do because it's about them, and they will absolutely steal the show. This is little Paloma who was watching her granddad sing her a song, which was absolutely lovely. And as I say, I don't have any photos of funerals, but this is a natural burial ground in Wixall, so not too far from here, and I know there are other ones around. So again, just looking at sort of different possibilities for funerals and also memorial services. So again, some people are doing sort of direct cremation, where you just have the cremation and then you actually have the service and memorials somewhere else, somewhere different. You have more time, it's more relaxed, so there are again lots of options around that. So, we're running out of time. I thought I would take any, if we have time, if anybody has any questions at this stage, please fire away.
Yeah, you were saying about the marketplace, in inverted commas, changing for funerals. If you could sort of fast forward 10 years and the changes you're seeing kind of accelerated, what would be the big changes you would see?
Oh, good question. I mean, this is, as I say, I've only just trained in funerals, so this is all anecdotal. I sit on the marketing committee for Humanist ceremonies, so that's how I have a bit of an insight into how things are changing. I think potentially people are going to be taking control. You know, in the same way that we used to go to the travel agent, who would take care of everything, and they would book on our flights and our in-flight meals and our transfers and our accommodation and everything, I don't know, would be packaged, and they'd put a fee on top to do that. That's essentially what a funeral director is doing. They're just putting together a package for you. Whereas now we live in a society where it's much more pick and choose. We can browse all of our suppliers on the internet. We often choose people that we want to work with, especially somebody as personal as a celebrant. So I think potentially in the future people are going to be doing that a lot more and actually choosing things themselves and tailor-making funerals. We are starting to see a lot of pre-need meetings, which is somebody who is going to die, and they are taking responsibility for their own funeral planning. So you can meet with them actually in advance of their death.
Yeah. So there might actually be a different type of funeral director at some point, one that maybe doesn't have the same type of solemnity that we see at the moment.
Yeah, and they are popping up all over the place, absolutely.
And I just add to that, I think I'm right in saying there's an investigation at the moment into the funeral industry by the government or some authority. So I think it's likely that prices are going to be carefully looked at and possibly pegged and that sort of thing. So things, as Maxine says, are going to change for funeral directors as well, I think. Yeah.
Just another funeral question. On the cases where you do actually have a body, are you not constrained to having
of some sort.
A crematorium, sorry. Yeah, I mean, or other,
and this is surprisingly few regulations, as I understand it, actually about what we do with our dead. And we are just very linked, it's become very institutionalised and very medicalised. And we think that it has to go in a certain type of vehicle and we have to stop them in a certain way. But there are FDs who are actually starting to say, take them home, take people home, look after them yourself, take them to wherever. Do you mean in terms of if you want a cremation, you have to go to a crematorium? Is that
no,
right?
well, I'm thinking initially about the location constraints there. In terms of actually including funding, I'm aware that there are quite strict regulations on this, but you can't just bury the body in the ground.
You can.
You can, but you still have to declare it on your...
Yes, it has to be. So many feet from a water course.
No, but it also has to be declared. So there is on that.
Yes.
I've checked
Yes.
this one recently.
Yes.
Yeah, but it is possible. And again, people don't realise that correctly, that things are possible. Yeah. Yes.
How did you make inroads with the funeral directors when you approached them?
I haven't yet, as I say, I've just trained, and one of the reasons that I put it off is because I wanted to finish the wedding season, because I know once I go to funeral directors, if they send me work and I decline it because I'm still working on weddings, they probably won't want to use me again because I'll be unreliable or inconsistent, so I wanted to make sure that I timed it, because I'm also going to California for 3 weeks, so I wanted to time it so that I know that I'm ready and available. But it will be a case of, I've actually, before I trained, I phoned up my local funeral directors and they established that people are asking for humanist funerals and there aren't any where I live. So I know that there is demand there.
You mentioned the training and assignments. Could you say a brief word about what kind of assignments you do with people facing these?
Yes, absolutely. So the training happens over 3 weekends. We have a 1-day induction day and then 2 residential weekends, and they're spaced out roughly 1 a month for 3 months. And you have assignments in between them. So the assignments might be, you've had an email inquiry about a wedding. How would you respond to it? And then it's very much based on script writing. So once you've actually started the training, you look at how to put a script together, whether that's for a funeral, wedding, or name ceremony. And they're all bespoke. Each one is written from scratch. There's no templates, there's no stick names in, there's no copy and paste. So the assignments tend to be about, this is the situation, this is the information about the couple, or about the deceased, or about the baby. How would you write that script? So that's what it tends to be. And then you get to do some role playing and things like that as well.
Is there any family opposition? If a person has made a decision, whether it's a couple getting married or a funeral, and it's against what family would want, particularly a funeral, is family opposition, can that override this person's wishes?
Yeah, so with weddings it's fairly straightforward. Occasionally you'll get some family members that aren't happy that it's not in a church or don't quite understand it. They're usually the ones that will come up to you afterwards and say, that was amazing, that changed my mind. With funerals it can be tricky, and of course you have to think about who your client is. You know, your client is not the deceased, your client is usually the next of kin, and you have to go along with your client's mission, and yeah, it can cause tensions, often not. It is a rare case, but sometimes you do have disagreements that have to be sorted out within the family.
Just one more question. If there's any others, I think we're going to have to move on, otherwise we're not going to get it. Okay, well, Maxine, thank you very much. Sue Falder, come tell us a little bit about pastoral care.
In 2009, I went on a trip with a small group of humanists to Belgium to have a look at what Belgian humanists do. They do a lot. We saw how they deal with ceremonies, very interesting. I was a celebrant, and I am a celebrant. But then we looked at their pastoral work. We went into a hospital where the humanist counsellor will be responsible for talking to people who are thinking along the lines of euthanasia, which of course is legal in Belgium, so they are the people who sort of deal with that. We went to a residential home where there was what you could call a chaplain, I suppose, or, well, he was a full-time person who used to do very much what we would do for ceremonies, you know, write the story of the people's lives, and that was a real benefit to them in terms of, you know, feeling that they recognised meaning for themselves. We went to a prison and spoke to a chap there, and went round the prison. What else did we do? I don't know, but the other things they do are, they are part of peacekeeping operations. They are active in universities and colleges. They support fishermen. They work in airports. You know, they are everywhere. It's a different system, and there's a lot of money for various reasons sloshing around the humanists in Europe, but particularly in Belgium. So it was quite different, but at the time there was, as far as I could tell, there was no will within the Humanists, BHA as it was, to do anything similar, which I felt disappointed about. But indeed, in 2013, by 2013, they were ready to start their first training course for pastoral volunteers. And I went on that first course. There were about 8 or 10 of us, I think. No, probably about 8. That was in 2013. Now it's 2018, and there are 250 pastoral volunteers with the network, working in mostly, well, a third in NHS trusts. Well, let me put it this way, a third of NHS trusts have now got a non-religious pastoral volunteer in them. 15% of prisons have, and there are, as Simon mentioned earlier, that non-religious people are being accepted for paid positions within chaplaincies now. We have just had, which you may have picked up in Humanist information, we've just had appointed a Humanist full-time managing chaplain in a hospital in Leicester. And there are other paid humanists in, certainly in other hospital chaplaincies. One in prison. So how is that network run? Humanists UK has been campaigning, and they have somebody, Simon O'Donoghue, who is the head of the Pastoral Care Network. He negotiates with the heads of the chaplaincies of prisons and the heads of the chaplaincy of the NHS. And he fields requests which are coming in constantly from different areas, which I'll mention in a bit, for non-religious people to be available. And he also, importantly, monitors adverts that go out from institutions who are looking for chaplaincy volunteers or paid chaplains. And if those adverts are not inclusive of non-religious belief systems, he will negotiate with them. He will write legal letters to them to encourage them to make their advertisements more equitable. And at the moment there are 14 institutions actively looking for non-religious pastoral carers in mental health and other chaplaincy, and 6 prisons, including one paid one, looking specifically for non-religious carers. So why is it needed? Maybe amongst us, as it were, it seems an obvious question, but there should be equality of provision for those who are in hospital, for those who are in prison, and for anybody else who wants to speak to somebody and wants to actually speak to somebody who has the same kind of belief system as they themselves have. It may seem self-evident to us, and of course, you know, it is a legal requirement, but for those who have been established in chaplaincy for a long time, and traditionally managing chaplains have been CV, and many of them are very, very nice, of course, but they will all give you the same answer. They will all tell you that people of no faith and any faith are dealt with by them, and they have no prejudice against them. And they do not see, really, no, do not always see, or have not in the past always seen, the argument for having humanist or non-religious people in the work. And of course, the other thing that is important, I think, for us is that in terms of public knowledge, it should not just be felt that caring is for the religious. It's the province of the religious religions, because of course it's not. So it's important, and it's happening. It's definitely happening. So what do you do if you go into pastoral care, become a part of the pastoral care network? Each chaplaincy is run differently. Some are still quite traditional, others are very welcoming to non-religious people. They're all different sizes, obviously. St Guy's and Thomas's in London has a chaplaincy team of 12 full-time chaplains. Our local hospitals, Shrewsbury and Telford, have got 1.5 chaplains between them. So you can imagine they're run in rather different ways, and the sort of formality or informality of the organisation is very different. And I spoke to somebody who is in a large chaplaincy where when they've seen people, they have regular meetings, which he called, he said, we have handwritten patient notes for the chaplaincy team that we complete, and we feed back in reflective practice sessions, which sounds absolutely ideal and what you would want. Other places have chaplaincy meetings which are all about organisation and bureaucracy. Others have no chaplaincy meetings at all, or any feedback. You know, it varies. But what do you do if you're in an NHS trust and you've been accepted to be part of the a pastoral carer? You go and talk to people. In some trusts you might be directed to certain people who have expressed the fact in some way, recorded the fact in some way. It doesn't happen in all hospitals that they are non-religious. But mostly you would probably find yourself introducing yourself on a ward and going to visit patients, and gradually over time getting yourself known by the staff on the ward, who would then begin to say, well, there's a lady over there who I think it would be good if you went and had a word with her today. And gradually it builds up that you are known as a non-religious, usually a chaplain, and you become a part of that system, whatever that system is. Obviously, it's wrong room.
Very interesting, very interesting.
Enough of that. Anyway, one of the things I did when I was going into Telford Hospital was that I got some material into the chapel about humanism, and a mention in the leaflet that they give out. So that's quite important as well to actually publicise the fact that there are non-religious people available, and possibly in the future, and that is happening in some places, people who are also celebrants and chaplains can do public funerals for people who haven't got any relatives, or do some funerals for babies who have died. Those are the kinds of extra things that you may be called on to do. If you were to go into a prison, again, of course, it would differ, but you might go in as part of the chaplaincy team and go in for a regular amount of time every week and join in the work of the chaplaincy, which might be going to see people who in solitary confinement, might be going to meet people who just joined the prison and make sure they know what happens in the chaplaincy. It might be helping prisoners with bereavement in some sort of way, or with family problems. Those are the sort of daily work of the chaplaincy, and they act as a channel of communication for families to prisoners. What I did when I worked in Stafford was rather different. I started off by going in to see one particular person who was a humanist, and asked specifically to see a humanist. And I saw him for quite a while, and then we decided together to try and start a group, a humanist group in the prison. And that group was quite successful. And you might ask who came to it. Many people came to it, just as many people come to humanist meetings, people who, most of them had never heard of it. Many of them were not religious, some were vehement atheists, some were religious, had been brought up in religious homes, a variety of people, just the same as any other humanist group, really. My claim to fame was that somebody who came to the group for 2 years, well, it wasn't a claim to fame, but it pleased me, that somebody who came to the group for 2 years and was an adamant atheist and didn't want to be called a humanist, when he, just before he left to go to another prison, he said, I would call myself a humanist now. So I thought that was an achievement, actually. Anyway, we had a weekly, and then it was a fortnightly session where I tried to convey things about humanism to them. I had some information which I'd actually written, little leaflets, and humanism in brief, which is jolly difficult. And those were about, books were there for them to borrow, and so on, if they were interested. But mostly, I tried to look at current events and subjects which had a slightly ethical sort of stance that we could try and look at, in a rational and thoughtful way. Just as an example of a few that occurred to me, that the baby Charlie in Alder Hay, remember, that case, we talked about that. Noel Conway, of course, and with his challenges about assisted dying, drones in warfare, and robots taking over work. I used to take in pictures from the news, and we'd look at them, and I'd try to draw out, challenging things like begging and that sort of thing, and see what people thought. Some people were not very rational, but on the whole, they were very thoughtful and interesting and interested. We sometimes watched a TED talk. I expect you know about TED talks. A very good one about emotional first aid sticks in my mind, that went down well, and we discussed it afterwards. We used some of Simon's talks from Radio Shropshire on different themes, which I tried to pull out. We listened to music. I used to bring in music that they liked. Poetry. Some of them wrote poetry. We looked at some poetry. And I, with the help of this group actually, provided books for the prison library, which were read, and for a small chaplaincy library as well. And got the new Humanist magazine to go into the prison as well. So I did what I could. We had special days, which I must mention, special days. Each religion in prison is allowed so many celebratory days, and they are allowed special food, special foods, special activities, and extras. And so, of course, we needed some Humanist days. So we landed on World Humanist Day. We had Darwin Day, and we had Human Rights Day. Those were the three. We could have four, but I thought those three were all right. And I tried to provide stuff that was relevant. On the Human Rights Day, they used to write to prisoners of conscience. The amnesty, right for rights thing that they do. We did that. So various things like that. And I will just read to you some things that were written on cards when either they left or when I left, which I gave up last year. Just to show that it had some effect. Thanks for facilitating the intellectual breaths of fresh air that was the Humanist group at HMP Stafford. I always look forward to them, and not just because of the biscuits. The biscuits were quite important. Thank you for all the kindness and support you've shown me since we met. It's been great to be able to speak to someone who doesn't judge, and someone I can have an intelligent conversation with. It's been very helpful, this is somebody else, having a group of people who can meet together, with whom to talk about things outside this box, you have helped provide a much needed release. But you have also enlightened and enriched my mind on the topics of life, death and humanism, and for that I'm very grateful. Somebody else said, thank you for keeping it real, and the biscuits. And a couple of short ones. Thank you so much for accepting me into the group. I hope this will be the beginning of a lifelong change in thinking for me. And the last one, you have really helped to ease this difficult part of my life. So there. Really worthwhile. Just, you know, it just does feel worthwhile, obviously, when you get comments like that. So other areas where non-religious pastoral caring is needed and is being requested. In the armed forces, very much individual efforts at the moment, I think, within the armed forces too, to provide alternatives to something that is very, very established as religious chaplaincy, but it's there. Universities, such as this one, there are one or two people, again, it's rather individual efforts at the moment, but one or two people who are connected with student welfare and who are running or run a humanist group. It's sort of easier in a university because it's not a government institution. They all organise their own finances and things, so well, I don't think finance comes into it, but you know, they are separate bodies. And obviously if you work in one, it helps as well. There's been a project recently, the regional organiser of the Canal and River Trust got in touch with the BHA, Humanists UK, because a lot of people live on canal boats and some people live on their own and are very lonely and very isolated and can get ill and might not want anybody religious coming near them. And that is a situation which is crying out really for volunteers. And negotiations are in the pipeline for getting that going, certainly in this area. There's been a request for non-religious people to be part of crisis response teams. Obviously we're not big enough to field a team, but we could link up with others. There was an interesting request recently from an arts group who had, I don't know, you may have heard of this film, I'm sure you know about it, a film called The Institute, which was when a group of scientists were put, do you know about it? Were put into, I've left all the information at home, I was going to bring it. They recreated a place that was called the Something Institute in Soviet Russia in the 1950s, where scientists were all kept more or less under guard, I think. And they put modern day scientists into that situation. Everything was as it would have been, and the demands were made upon them and the restrictions were put upon them that would have been put at the time. And it was made into a film, and this film is apparently quite disturbing. And when people come out of the film, they are given the opportunity for counselling. And the request came through to Simon for non-religious volunteers to be involved, and that was all happening in London, so I didn't volunteer, but it's just interesting the areas in which we are being requested. So if you want to join a chaplaincy team, or if you want to become a volunteer, if you want to join a chaplaincy team, you need endorsement from your faith group. And in order to get that as a humanist, you would go to a humanist training course. And the training course is just over 2 full days of training in London, where you have talks and discussions and role play. There's a great range of people. A lot of people, of course, already have some kinds of experience which are relevant, but there is a great range of people, and everybody is very supportive. And after you've trained and been accepted and got your certificate, there are webinars, seminars over the web with case studies that can keep you in contact with other people and give you support. So there is a lot of support. Just the last couple of things I want to mention. There's a parallel sort of course which is organised by the Free Churches, which has been going for some time. It's called Starting Out in Healthcare Chaplaincy. And some people have been to that as well as the Humanist one. It has the advantage that they will find you a placement, because of course they have a lot of contacts around the place. And last of all, I will mention, if any of you are already experienced in counselling, you might be interested to know that there is a Master's in Existential and Humanist Pastoral Support, which is a programme set up with the new School of Psychotherapy and Counselling, and it gives you direct routes to management roles in pastoral support settings, and by the end of it you would be a fully accredited funeral, wedding and naming celebrant as well. So if you're interested in an MA in existential and humanist pastoral support, and you already have a lot of experience, then that might interest you. And the next Humanist Pastoral Care training course is in Newcastle in December, and applications are being accepted now. Sorry, I've gone on and on.
Questions?
If you go into a hospital, what happens about confidentiality of it, and what happens if you're told something that you feel you need to pass on, and what happens to you in terms of self-preservation if people tell you discussing things?
Well, I think in terms of confidentiality, it would be like any counselling. You would keep things confidential unless you felt there was going to be harm as a result of it. And you're lucky that you've got somebody above you that you would feed back to in that circumstance, I think. Yes, in terms of your own well-being, it's a difficult one. I mean, that's something that colleagues and probably colleagues are more useful in that respect. Like with the Celebrants, there are forums that you can share, and you would know, for instance, if you've been on a training course, you would you would probably know other people who deal with training course with you. I mean, that's what I would do. I would use colleagues in that circumstance. But obviously, it's something you would have to monitor for yourself. Yeah.
So where do you sit in between counselling, social work and advocacy?
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, you're not an advocate.
So you don't advocacy?
No. I don't think so. You're
Defending.
right.
Would defending describe it?
Would what describe it?
Defending.
Defending. Well, yes, probably that's what you would say you were doing. Yes. Yes, I would say that. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That's great. I'm going to talk about humanist school speakers. Now, the whole business of schools and RE is a big, thorny subject. The humanists, I showed you earlier some of their campaigns, and we have some quite strong objectives. We want integrated, inclusive community schools that are secular, and we want to get rid of state-funded religious schools. A third of all government-funded schools are religious in this country, which is quite exceptional in the world, well, certainly in Europe. And we want to get rid of discrimination in terms of admissions and also appointment of staff. And we want to get rid of, certainly, we want to get rid of some of these illegal schools, some of which are fundamentalist and very oppressive. We want to get rid of a collective worship. We can talk about that more if you want later. And we basically just want a broad education where people learn to live in a pluralist society, that they have good sex and relationship education, values and citizenship education, and they're encouraged to develop curiosity and thinking skills and creativity. That's what we all want. And we want to reform the religious education. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but one of the main things they're doing now is encouraging people to go into schools. It's called school volunteers. Now, I'm on the SACRE for Shropshire. That's to say the Standing Advisory Committee on Religious Education. It's set up by the local education authority, and we actually write the RE curriculum for the Shropshire State Schools. It's used by all the Shropshire State Schools. The religious schools are, Church being the ones that encourage to use it, they tend to not use it quite the same way there. And it's very good. Teachers are encouraged to talk about non-religious worldviews, including humanism. But of course, many of the teachers don't know much about it, and they don't have the skills to go and talk about it. So basically, school speakers can go in and talk about humanism, and I'll give you an example in a moment. Quite often we're asked to go in and talk about ourselves, how we became humanists, why it's important to us, what it means to us, and how we think it will affect other people. We often asked to come and give a humanist perspective. I was asked to go into Adams When recently. They had a module where they looked at different faiths, looking at family relationships, same-sex marriages, abortion, and other issues like that. And they asked me to go in to discuss the humanist perspective on it. And it was very, very interesting, lovely class, very interesting, a great RE teacher. Some schools have an RE day where they get people from lots of different faiths coming in. And again, that's fun as well. And we can help individual pupils, and we can also help teachers with their RE courses, and we can sometimes go in to multi-faith panels. I went into multi-faith panel at Thomas Telford School. There was an Orthodox Jew, not ultra-Orthodox. There was a fairly fundamentalist Muslim, a Pentecostal Christian, and a Baha'i. Baha'i was absolutely delightful. There was the other three were all fundamentalist. So when we were asked questions, I let them go first. And I just grinned because they just shot themselves in the foot. Anyway. And then I gave, a rational, evidence-based humanist answers to them. And yeah, it was great. All right. Let me work with teachers. So, let me give you an example. So I might get a phone call from the head of an RE asked me to give help with their RE teaching. Now, if I haven't met them or been to that school before, I would go in and meet the teacher and sit down with them so they realise that I'm a pretty benign guy. I'm not an angry atheist. I'm not against religion. And I will present humanism for what it is. It's positive values rather than bad-mouth religion. And the topic that I'll be asked is, what is humanism? And I'll also need to find out who I'm going to talk. So 15-year-olds, not easy 15-year-olds. This is also called Year 10 and Key Stage 4, these are technical terms which I've had to learn. And you find out how long you're going to talk for, 40 minutes with 15 questions. So what would I do? Well, it's very easy, because the Humanist UK have a programme called What is Humanism? With PowerPoint and everything. So what I do is I use this. This is the beginning of the PowerPoint, and I'll just show you the slides. Far more slides than you'd use in 40 minutes. If you just use the red ones, it would be about the right time. But you can pick and choose, because some of the subjects are dealt with a little bit more or a little bit less. So you can actually tailor it to what the teacher's interested in, and what you're interested in, what you feel will work well for you. So this is how it might go, so for 15-year-olds. You say, okay, so we're all human. So we're all human, and we talk about what's important to us, human values, and so on. With each slide, there is a little text that comes with it, which you can, if you want, use to speak, but it's actually just more an idea of giving you ideas, or if they ask questions, to answer them, to develop the sort of themes on each slide. You talk about human creativity and how we value science. Science has produced many wonderful things. It's meant to produce some things that aren't so good as well. And we talk about empathy and compassion as well. What it means to be a humanist. So there's a series of slides that go on. Are we religious? And we maybe have to discuss with them what religion is, what it means, and so on. So that's just the beginning of this series of PowerPoint slides that could be used for talking about humanism. Very easy. Now another example. I get a phone call from HRE. I haven't met them. I meet them again. Now this one wants me to talk about secularism, and it's for 17-year-olds, so the lower sixths. Now this is great fun, because once they're in the sixth form, they're much less belligerent, they're more engaged, and it's great. And I'm told it's quite short, 30 minutes, 20 minutes for discussion. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a module called Secularism and Society. And I just need to take you through this is the Humanists' homepage. You probably recognise this. And along the top, you've got some pull-down. So if you click on the education one, you get this pull-down thing. And we're going to go for the teachers. And if you do that, it goes straight to Understanding Humanism, RE Teaching Resources. And this is a fantastic resource for information about humanism and teaching humanism. And this is the home page for Understanding Humanism. Now it looks a bit busy, but actually it's quite simple. I'll just point out a couple of things. This is a book, some copies on the back over there, called What is Humanism? It's a very lively book, lots of pictures. It's made to primary schools and perhaps some of the younger secondary school pupils. But look, across the middle there, you've got different ages. That's the book. And it's free to every school, and it's easy to get extra copies and give them to teachers if you want. They do appreciate it. So, if you look across the middle there, you've got different age groups. You've got this age group, and if you click on that, you'll get the sort of subjects for which you have teaching resources. What is humanism? The need for knowledge, meaning and happiness. These are for quite young children, and the presentations are quite simple, but interesting. So, older age group, you also have ethics, and you might have atheism and agnosticism. Getting a bit older now, we're coming on to secondary school, life and death, ethics, meaning and happiness. Slightly older, other subjects as well. And then you get on to the sixth form, And there are less subjects there, but what you do have is something called human perspectives. So let's just look at that. This is get a humanist view on life's fundamental questions or on a contemporary ethical debate. Many of our perspectives also contain presentations, questions, ideas for activities, and links to further resources and information. So these are the various things that in the little squares there, but I've written out the topics on the other side, and there are others as well. And you can see there are modules for teaching about controversial things like assisted dying or euthanasia, as they call it on this one, environmental issues, vegetarianism, abortion, theodicy, the problem of evil, and so on. So what I was looking for was something on secularism. So let's go back and click on this one, and we get secularism in society. Click on that. What is the humanist vision for a better world? What kind of society do humanists strive for? What is secularism and why is it important to humanists? Find out what humanists work for and what lies behind their motivation. So we click on that, and we get this. There's a huge amount of resource here. And it's probably beautiful to see, so I'm going to enlarge some of it. So the top two there, these are a series of short videos and films, and some of them cartoons. Quite a few of them by Andrew Copson. They're really lively, really interesting. You show them, they're asked about sort of 5 minutes, and then you discuss them on various aspects of secularism. If you go to the bottom here, we've got more films on the left, and some really interesting ones. You've got the Harm Principle, John Stuart Mill. We've got The Veil of Ignorance, which is all about John Rawls's theories, Stephen Pinker, and so on. And then on this side here, you've got a document written by Richard Norman, a prominent, an internationally prominent humanist philosopher, and he's written this article which runs into several pages, and these are the sort of topics on it. Now, if you were to read this, it's very readable, very interesting, you would know 10 times, 100 times more than the pupils, and probably 3 times more than the teachers. So when you say, oh, I'm going to go and talk about secularism, you've got absolutely, you've got more than enough for a class there, and if they're difficult to engage, you can show videos, and you will know a lot about it. And I'm saying this because, you know, when I first started going to schools, I thought, well, I know a bit about humanism, but what if they ask difficult questions? But this makes it much easier. Now, my third example, this is a sort of nightmare example. You get a phone call to come in, and arrange to be, if not, and they want to talk about how do you know what's true. Now, that's a nice subject. That's what we call epistemology, the theory of knowledge. And I'm very interested in that as a scientist. But it's to 11-year-olds, and the teacher says, they're a lively class. That means they're either going to sit there glum, or they're going to be totally out of control, with very little in between. So I quite enjoy these things. I like a challenge. So we've got 30 minutes of 20-foot discussion. So what I'd probably do is I'd sort of make something up. This is sort of what I'd do. Okay. So I'd take them through it a little bit. I'd say, well, what do we mean by when we believe something, when we have faith in something? Well, I say, well, basically to believe something is to say you think something is true. There may be evidence, there usually is, there may not be, but it's basically sort of a statement, you think something's true. Faith is to say something is true when there really is either no or insufficient evidence. And to have blind faith is to say something's true when there's clear evidence to the contrary. So they understand that and they say, okay, so let's do this. What's that? 2 and 2, theory of evolution, the sun is hot. Well, I think we all believe those. And there's good reason to believe those because there's good evidence. So that's the belief. And then belief in God, belief in alternative medicine, belief in miracles. Well, there is either no evidence or I would consider myself insufficient evidence to believe in those. So I would say that was a faith issue. And then, of course, you've got belief in the flat world creations. All that Shrewsbury will win the FA Cup. And I think there's very good evidence that those are not true. So you establish that, okay? And then you say, well, humanists, obviously, we believe that everything can be explained naturally without the supernatural. We look at the facts, we think hard, and we make up our own minds. That's what humanists do. So let's do this. Now we'll do it with you. I say to them, you're on a jury, okay? and there's a guy in the dock being accused of murder. So, if you get the kids to shout out answers, as soon as they're shouting, they start misbehaving. They start hitting each other and throwing things. So you mustn't let them speak. If any of you are teachers, I'm probably sound completely wrong. So what I do is this. I give them what the witnesses say, and they give their answers with their arms. So you're looking here, okay? So I'm going to say something. The first witness says, he's guilty because he's foreign. Now, if you think that's good evidence, you point that way. If you think it's bad evidence, you point that way. Let's see. Now, why haven't you got your hand up? You, come on. So you see what I'm doing? Get everybody involved. Some pointing one way, some another, and some change. And then you talk about it, and you say why you think it might be good evidence or bad evidence. And I mean, really, that's what comes under the heading is bad evidence and prejudice. Okay, the next one. My friend's mother's hairdresser's aunt said, okay. So, you know, this is hearsay, this is just gossip. You like it. Well, maybe she did know, but there's no evidence that she did. I read it in the newspaper he killed him. Now, is that good evidence? Let's say your answer. Is it good evidence or bad evidence? Yeah, you see, now you're probably going to put your hand up there. Because you say, so some will say, you know, so I would sort of be about here. The reason is this. Newspapers usually tell us the truth. If you said it rained yesterday, it did. If Fulham won the football cup, it probably did. Usually, newspapers do tell us the truth. But how do they know this? And also, newspapers don't always get it right. So I would say this was bad evidence, but it's worth discussing. Okay. I read in the newspaper that he killed him. Okay, right. His fingerprints match those in the murder weapon. Agreed? Okay. Oh, good evidence. So I'm looking down the okay. Right. Everyone thinks he did it. Well, mind you, usually everybody thinks something. It's true. Everybody thought the world was flat at one time. They were wrong. But usually, everybody thinks something is right. We all know exceptions. But how does everybody know? They haven't looked at the evidence. So I think probably we'd say that was bad evidence. Something everybody's wrong. The important thing is that they don't just have a knee-jerk reaction. They think about it and try and explain why they think it's wrong. I just know you. I know in my heart. Intuition. Intuition is very, very powerful. And for many things, we can just base things on intuition. We have a very powerful brain. We can't always explain why we make decisions, but they're often very, very good decisions. But not always. Sometimes gut instinct or intuition can be very wrong. I know you had a motive to kill him. What do you think? Yeah, and I think you're going to point to good evidence. Not proof, but suggestive. So, humanists use the same rules of evidence, so we don't believe in ghosts, gods, and spirits, and miracles, and the effect of prayer, and afterlife, and the supernatural. But the same rules as the jury would use in that trial. Okay, so that's just 3 examples of the sort of thing you might do going to school. And it's fun. It's really fun getting involved with the children. The RE teachers are, without exception, delightful people and very, very keen to learn about humanism. And I really enjoy going in. In fact, it's the teachers I want to impress as much as the pupils. Obviously, that class is good, they know it. But the more we can persuade the teachers that we're a useful resource for coming in and talking about normative ethics. How do we know what's right and wrong without a Bible? In fact, I'm probably going to talk more about that than about humanism, although of course I slip in a little bit of humanism as well. So, school volunteering. To do it, you apply online. The training is very good. And as you can see, you get detailed lesson plans and PowerPoint presentations, lots of videos, you have handouts, and you have class activities. So it's not a difficult thing to do, and there's very good post-training support. The training's at weekends, and when you're trained, you can do as little as you like. The first year I just did 2 in the whole year. Now I'm doing about 5 or 6 schools a year, and that's not a big commitment. I'd like to do more, but I'm a bit busy with other things at the moment. And one really enjoys getting to know the schools and the RE teachers. I enjoy enjoy teaching about humanism. I enjoy getting better at teaching. I enjoy making a difference to the pupils. I enjoy raising the profile of humanism. Walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And that's humanism in action.